Good afternoon, dear students. Nice to be with you all once again over this YouTube session. As usual, it is for class 8 and we will be discussing the last stanza and the concluding part of the poem by Shakespeare, All the World's a Stage. This poem is taken from the play of Shakespeare, As You Like It. It's one of the most celebrated plays, and we have been discussing the different stages, if you remember. We started with the infant stage, then it was followed by a school-going boy, a student, and then a soldier, and from a soldier it was a lover. It was a lover first, and then it was followed by a soldier, and then the soldier went on to become a judge, and now after becoming a judge, he loses all his energy. He loses all his luster, all his, popularity, and he becomes an old man. And becoming an old man is the last but one stage. So before his death, he loses all his energy. We had discussed that in one of the videos. Now, the concluding part. And his big manly voice, the old man's voice, which was once very strong, very attractive and very commanding, has now become a shrilled voice, turning again towards childish treble. What is the meaning of childish treble? Shrill accent of a child. A child has a squeaky voice. It has a shrill voice. So the man who has gone through different stages of life finally ends up as a weak old man who has the voice of a child. So the manly voice is no longer there to attract the crowds, but he becomes weak and his voice once again turns out into the voice of a child. Trebles, turning again towards childish treble, squeaky with shrills, pipes and whistles in his sound. So he is not even audible to people, because his voice becomes very squeaky. It's a shrilled voice and he finds itself very difficult to make himself clear. So he has to try hard to communicate trebles and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all that ends this strange eventful history is second childishness. So the history of man, the life of man is now nearing its end. It's the final moment. And what happens in this final moment, the last stage, eventful history, is second childishness. So the eventful history of man, the life of man, begins with an infant and it's almost going to be ended. It's going to end. It's going to end as a child. He attains a second childishness. How can you say that an old man becomes a second child? He loses everything. He loses his teeth. You see? Sans teeth, sans taste, sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, and sans everything. So, when an old man is almost towards his death, he loses all his teeth, and because of the absence of teeth, he is not able to taste anything, sans taste. His eyes, they do not give out light as they used to, so that bright and brilliant, those bright and brilliant eyes which he once had as a young man have become weak. So the eyesight becomes poor. He's almost blind. He's unable to kind of see anything properly. Okay, and then the body doesn't support him. He behaves like a child, becomes helpless like a child, begins to cry like a child, and he is dependent on others for every moment of his and for every need of his. So he becomes a second child. The second childishness takes over and mere oblivion. So he fades. The life of man fades into darkness. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, and sans everything. What's the meaning of the word sans? Without. So the last stage, the last moment of a man's life ends up in total misery. It ends up in sorrow because he loses his teeth, he loses his sight, eyes no longer function, and he loses the taste and even the appetite. He's not able to eat properly, only liquid food. Even the liquid food is taken only in a little measure or in a little quantity. So the appetite, the desire to eat food is also no longer there. And therefore, man ends up his life as he began it. That's the mystery of life, you see. Everyone is born as an infant, as a child, and they cry helplessly as soon as they come out of their mother's womb. And in the same manner, when a man dies, he is equivalent, or he becomes, or he is similar to that of a young infant. Okay, the baby does not have any teeth, the infant, and it has, of course, eyes, but the eyes don't take their full shape. And it is not able to taste all kinds of food, only the liquid food. So, the child is represented by an old man. The old man, once again, becomes a second child, bearing some of the characteristics of the child. So, the sum and substance of this poem is, okay, if you would ask me to give the theme or the central idea of this poem is, man is born as a child, the world is a stage, and man, being born as a child, has his entrance through birth, and he finishes his life, and that becomes the exit. So he moves out. So the stage is set when a child is born, it makes its entry, and the child grows up into man, and it plays different roles in between its infancy and its death. So when man dies, he dies as a second child, and he clears off the stage of life. A beautiful poem, a philosophical touch describing the 7 stages of man by Shakespeare. You see, you have to kind of have a look into this. You have to take a look into this. Man is born as a child, point number 1, and dies as a second child. So the beginning and the end is the same. And helplessness as a child. When a child is born, it is helpless. It's dependent on its mother and some others, okay, for its growth. In the same manner, man becomes helpless when he becomes a second child. All that he longs for is, now I have to leave this world. So make the best of your life in all the stages. Shakespeare talks about 7 stages, starting from the stage of the infant and till the last stage, that is the old man stage. So God has given us 7 stages. There are different moments in life. There are ups and downs in life. Okay, life is almost like a kind of music. The various notations, the ups and downs of life are the beats of music. And life is also compared to a stage. So what are we supposed to do? Let us live every stage of life to its best and to its fullest. Let's make the best of life, achieve the best in life, so that when we reach the last stage, the stage of the old man, we can die with peace. Peace is all what matters. And when you have satisfaction before your death is a sweet death. You don't have to worry about anything. So I hope you might have understood what I have taught. You must have got at least some idea, some picture of it. If you want to understand the poem better, you need to read the poem and take all the necessary help of the books. I shall be sending you some questions related to this as well. So tomorrow in the next video, we'll be discussing a story, a very interesting story. Until then, keep reading this poem, revise it, and stay safe. Goodbye. 10 minutes.